It's
crazy?
good. Hey guys, it is Tuesday. Happy Tuesday. Gratitude Tuesday, as we like to call it here on the TED Show. I'm Ted Bogert, and I am with the lovely, the talented, the energetic, the radically responsible Kendra Davies. What's happening?
Oh, hello, everybody.
I'm excited to talk about this topic since I know absolutely nothing about it. But that's okay. I purposely didn't go look because I wanted to be surprised and engaged. But when I posted it, I had a lot of people come message me and say, "Wow, what a great topic!" Uh,
Yeah.
so apparently, I am definitely not on the inside know of anything. Anyway, welcome. Enough about me. Let's dive. Let's talk.
Let's do it.
Tell me
Let's do
what
it.
this is
Talk
and
it
why it's
out.
even important.
So, radical responsibility is taking full ownership of your mental, emotional, spiritual, physical, fiscal health. And the reason why it's radical is that you're going to do it no matter what is coming at you. So this idea that the world is happening to us, we're powerless over certain things and the circumstances of our lives and the things that happen to us, we still take radical responsibility, radical ownership of our own thoughts, feelings, behaviors, the habits that we build, the cycles. We pay attention to the gaps in our knowledge. We take ownership that we're not right all the time, which I know
What?
is like a shocker.
Imagine.
Right? It's this idea that instead of looking at it like it's self-care, it's more like self-accountability and taking full ownership for your experience and your life and what you're going to take and get from it and what you're going to produce and provide out into the world.
Okay, so my first thought is, don't we already do that? Like, am I just looking at it too much through a teeny little glass?
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if radical responsibility then means that no matter how I'm reacting is also my responsibility. How I'm
Perceiving.
interfacing, yes. How I'm perceiving. Oh, I don't like that one either. I'm sure a lot of people won't. Um, what I'm feeling now a little bit is you're having to take the responsibility pretty much not for the action of the other person or what the action of what's going on, but how all of it you're dealing with, I guess. How
Yeah.
you respond to it, how you perceive it,
Yeah.
what your next action take
Yep.
steps are.
Yep.
Yeah, so nobody's going to want to hear that. So I understand now why it's radical. I think I've told this on the show before, but I used to tell my kids, they call it counselor talk, that if they
Mm-hmm.
said I'm angry, I would say, well, you're choosing to be angry. Nobody wants to have that responsibility put on them because it's easier to blame the person who did whatever they did to cause you to feel anger. Yes?
So I definitely think that we feel oftentimes in response to things, right? But if I come at you and I say, you know what, Ted Bogert, you're an MF in Volkswagen. You're a
That could have gone
Volkswagen.
anywhere, so I'm very happy.
Yeah. What do you feel? What do you feel? If I say
My
you're a
immediate
Volkswagen,
feeling in role playing, my immediate feeling is, what the F is she talking about? And then I'm offended.
exactly. So you don't
Am I not a
feel
Rolls Royce,
anything.
Kendra?
You don't feel anything because you're like, I'm not a Volkswagen. Like, that's crazy. I'm a
Right.
human and not a car. So I don't have any feeling for that. Like, other than why wouldn't you choose a Rolls Royce?
Yes. And then I feel sorry for you because I'm like, is that the best you could do? Um,
Right?
in the
But here's
argument,
the
like in your role
thing.
playing.
So the thing is that words hurt what's already there.
Yes.
Words hurt what's already there. So if I call you a Volkswagen, you don't feel anything. But if I say you're a shitty dad, you're a shitty husband, you're a
Right.
shitty talk show host, like all of a
Damn,
sudden,
you could do the first two, but the last one, you cut me.
But if I say those things, like all of a sudden that starts rearranging some furniture. We're feeling a little uncomfortable. We're feeling reactivating, right? Like we are triggered by those responses. And so I use that to illustrate the point that radical responsibility is recognizing that, yes, you said a mean thing. You said, Kendra, you're a shitty mom. But my responsibility is to look at it and say, if I got that reacted, if I'm reacting in this way, is it because I think I'm a shitty mom? Because if you call me a Volkswagen, I don't feel that because I know I'm not a Volkswagen. So if
Right.
you're going to challenge me on this and it touches, like operation, you know what I mean? You get a if I'm having that feeling, it's my responsibility to stop and look at it and say, is it because I'm afraid it's true? Why am I afraid it's true? Because I lose my temper and sometimes I yell and, like I'm not considerate of my son all the time and he's got all this time on his iPad. So my responsibility is not to come to you and be like, well, you hurt my feelings and you said I'm a shitty mom. My job is to go inward and say, why did I react this way? What do I need to do about it? Because if the reality is that I'm afraid that I'm a shitty mom, then I need to work on that for me, not because you called it, but because if you call me a shitty mom, I want to respond to that like you called me a Volkswagen. Like I want to be the best mom that I can be. And if I don't think that I am that, and then somebody outside of me can point it out and I'm like, what?
What about
Then
hurt
it's,
feelings? You mentioned that. So
yeah,
and again, I'm going with the gut because I'm just learning as you're talking.
sure.
So if somebody says that to me, if they don't matter to me, it doesn't matter. But what if they matter to me and they say that? I understand the part where I'm taking responsibility, but should I still be feeling hurt? Like I would be
Should? Yes.
upset about the friendship or the relationship.
Yeah.
Can you separate those? Are they
Well,
separatable?
I think we are talking about two different things because the radical responsibility is an inward, right? This is, I'm going to take responsibility for my reactions. I'm going to pay attention to my perceptions. I'm going to pay attention to the stories that I make up and the things that I assign out into the world, right? I'm going to take
Right.
responsibility for that. What you're talking about is like when my feelings get hurt, how do I then engage the person who I believe hurt my feelings and
Yes.
talk about it and make it right? And again, I don't think, I'm trying to think, I don't think that there's a scenario where if I'm not radically responsible for my own perceptions, that I can actually mend that relationship. Because if at the end of the day, I genuinely am afraid that I am a bad mom and you called me out on it, I'm never going to feel safe or trust you again.
Well, that's the thing. Like this
Hmm.
is demanding on you personally, but also establishes new parameters, new boundaries, and new I don't know what foundation for relationships. And
Yeah.
I get it though. I mean, I've been hurt by friends, and I choose the words like they didn't hurt me. I've been hurt, right? So I've
Hmm.
for whatever reason I've reacted. I've been hurt, but I don't. I have never taken a deep dive and gone, well, I'm hurt because I'm a crappy talk show host, or your outfit doesn't match today, Ted. You know
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I haven't, but I think that it's very deep, lots of layers, lots of layers.
Yeah. And I think that radical responsibility is learning to peel back the layers. It's easy. I call it fighting about the trash, right? And the example that's easy enough to give is you ask your partner to take out the trash and they say, okay, and then they don't do it, right? And let's say that in the history of the relationship, this is 227th time that this has happened. And you look at your partner and you say, you know what? You didn't take out the damn trash. You know what? And then a fight ensues about the trash. You know when the trash gets taken out. It's Tuesdays and Fridays. It's been that way since we lived in this house, blah, 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 blah. You said you would do it, you didn't do it, and we fight about the trash. Yeah. Radical responsibility would be coming into that situation and saying, when you don't do what you say you're going to do, I lose trust. I feel like you don't have my back. I feel like because you said you would do it and you didn't do it, that you think that my time is less valuable than yours. That's the story I have in my head. So I'm not going to fight with you about the trash. I want to make this right. I want you to understand where I'm coming from. And then that gives your partner, that other person, the chance to be like, whoa, like that's a lot of assigning. That's a lot That's a lot that you just took on right there. And I was just super late and I woke up late and I couldn't get the trash out. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
but when we fight about the trash fight lasts for days. The trash fight lingers and sits in your chest. And then every time they do something else, they said that they would call it 6, but they call it 7:30. And you're like, and then you didn't take out the trash. You remember
There's,
that?
yes.
I
I
have a
think that
laundry list of things
there's a
that you
laundry
didn't show
list.
up for. Hmm.
Yes. People, because it's usually never that one thing. Like the
It's never
thing
about the
is the
trash.
straw that, yes, it's never about the trash. It's much deeper, like you said, and I agree. How
Hmm.
does the person, so let's say you're in radical responsibility mode and they're a
Hmm.
rock. Like
Yeah.
they haven't felt it. They think they're a Volkswagen. You're calling them a Volkswagen and they have no earthly idea. How do you handle
Hmm.
that? How do you deal with that? How do you process that as the person who is taking the radical responsibility?
Well, I think that you know that you're not responsible for other people's reactions and how they feel. You know, like as a coach, as somebody who facilitates workshops or leads a retreat, when I start, the last thing I say, like I pray, yeah. And the last thing I say is, Kendra, you can't fuck this up. They're going to get what they want and nothing else. It is impossible to mess this up. It's impossible because people are going to take what they want. They're going to filter through their own stories, just like you and I do. They're going to filter through their own stories and they are going to respond through that lens. But when
Yes.
I'm in radical responsibility, when you want to fight with me about the trash and not go deep, I get to say, I've been there, buddy. You know what I mean? I lived 30 damn years fighting about the trash, but I'm not doing that anymore. You know, I can see that you're hurt. I can see that you're angry. I want this relationship to be better. I want to communicate better. How can we do that? We stop fighting about the trash. No matter how much trash talk is coming at us, we say, no, 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 no. I recognize that we're not talking about the trash anymore. Like, another key way to know if somebody or if you are reacting about the trash is when you know that your reaction or their reaction doesn't match like the wrongdoing. You know what I
Yes.
mean?
I
Like when you're about
totally
to
do.
get divorced because the trash didn't get taken out, you're like, if you don't do this, then I'm out of
Ex-
here. You know, it's like
it's so true.
you're
But how
not
do
fighting
people,
about the trash.
but how, so like, let's talk about a step. So I feel like I'm more evolved because I had 5 years of counseling as far as
Uh-huh.
understanding concepts. But
Yeah.
most people, they haven't developed the tools yet or just don't understand some of the keys. And so some of the things I know some of the things that you're saying, I mean, I can just visualize them like this. Well, she can't be talking about me. She's talking about my partner, my significant other, or my
Uh-huh.
kids, or my boss. I mean, she's talking about somebody. It can't be me.
Yeah.
So what tools, like what are some of the things that people can do to self-evaluate or to kind of go, all right, maybe this is what I need to do? Because they're never going to make the step from no responsibility to radical responsibility in one full swoop.
Do you know what's crazy, Ted? Is that if you think of stories of triumph, yeah, like stories that really blow your mind, that's exactly what people do. They go from nothing to fuck it, I'm going to take it all. And the reason I say that, it's because people are like, "Oh my gosh, like how am I ever going to do this? It's impossible. It's impossible." And then they wake up one day and they're like, "No, I'm just not going to eat bonbons today." And
Right.
then they string a few of those days into months, into years, and they've shifted their lifestyle and they've lost 100 pounds. And we revere them as like anomalies, like miracles. And really it's a matter of, I'm going to stop and pay attention to why I am reacting this way. When you recognize that you have a similar reaction at work with your partners and with your children and with your friends, you have a cycle. You have a thing that you're doing over and over again, building your awareness. Okay, so steps. Let me simmer down. Okay, steps.
No, I love it. I think you're right. But I think
Yeah, like you
people
have to have
are,
self-awareness.
you do. I agree. Go ahead. Steps. Yes.
So steps. So one, getting self-aware. You know, we talked about mindfulness last week, and I think that this plays in beautifully because the only way to be self-aware is if I can be more mindful. If I can slow down enough to recognize something is off. Like, this doesn't feel right. I don't like this argument. I didn't want to fight for 3 days when I asked for the trash to be taken out. Like, why am I in this situation? Let me pay closer attention to this, ask more questions. And I think that that requires self-awareness and that requires mindfulness. Second, if you're not working with a coach or a therapist or somebody else, or even a pastor or somebody at a church, if you're in AA or NA, work it out with your sponsor. Like, ask the questions, write it down, get a journal and ask, like, what does this feeling represent? So, and I can give you an example. So I always give trigger words when it comes to radical responsibility, right? Like, what are your trigger words? And mine is always and never. As soon as I get into a fight with a friend, a partner, anybody, if I'm getting into an argument, I go right to you always, or you never call me when you say you will. And it's not true. It's not true. Always and never are so rarely true. But when I started this process, I was hot tempered. I was either elated or rage. Like, those are the two extremes that I operated in. And finding that space between required me to slow down a bit and say, okay, like, what was the wrongdoing? Do you know what I mean? Right. Did they, okay, the trash didn't get taken out. Do I need to go to rage? Maybe no. Maybe no. What's an in-between feeling, right? And then asking myself, what does this feeling remind me of? Like, if I take out the people, take out Ted, take out the current circumstances, just look at the feeling. What does this feeling remind me of? When have I felt this feeling in the past? And what you will find is that for me, it is whenever I receive criticism that I usually get like that, right? Like, I usually, when I feel like I'm being criticized, or if I'm afraid that I'm wrong, right? My defenses come up, my armor goes up, and I'm fighting about the trash. Like, my goal is to spider monkey your eyes out of your face and be right no matter what. Like, that is my goal. And so throughout my process, my self-awareness led me to my trigger words. My trigger words allowed me to see that there was a cycle, there was a thing, there was a consistent thing that was happening that was causing this experience for me. My defensiveness, my reactiveness, all of that was triggered by certain things. And a lot of it was around feedback or being wrong.
Fascinating. I think people, what I'm hearing and what I'm thinking when you're speaking is, it's like triggers are like pushing buttons. And what I find fascinating, anytime I've been, I'm not I mean, I'll admit it, Stacey would too. I can fight dirty. And so you learn other people's triggers, and sometimes before they know or have evaluated what the trigger is, but you know it. And so when you're in that, that's where the triggers come up. Like, I know exactly what to say to bring somebody in a close relationship from 0 to a boiling point. And sometimes they don't know.
Yeah. And I feel like radical responsibility, especially for me, right? Because I'm in recovery. So, and I was the kind of drug addict that would steal your wallet and help you look for it, right? Like, my manipulation skills are fucking top tier. Yeah. So something that I have had to do is recognize that that is what I'm doing. Radical responsibility is me going into the argument, saying that thing, doing that behavior, and then stopping and saying, you know what? That's completely unfair. I did it to manipulate, and I did it because I'm afraid that I'm wrong.
Ooh, the M word. The M word. I may have been accused. I like charismatic better. I really don't like that M word a lot, although, yeah, I'm sure I have some of those qualities. I want to read, Jenny Joy just made a great point. I would say, I think maybe this issue needs a 3 response, and we're, hold on, Jenny, I'm old and I can't read it, but I promise Kendra will get to it. But oh no, I can read it. I would say this requires a 3 response, and what a 3 response looks like, or even a 4 or 5. I helped us have language to see when reactions were off the charts, and it gave us space to imagine a different response, even if we weren't feeling that way.
I really love that. And I think that, like, this is the next step, right? Like, once you become self-aware and you understand what's happening, like, you're actually connected to reality. You're not fighting about the trash anymore, because the trash isn't the reality. The trash is the exterior stimulant, but the internal response is the
Right.
reality, right? So once you've gotten
Yes.
there, I think Jenny's totally right. Like, can you imagine a different response? Is it possible that the person in front of you actually loves you and cares for you and values your time? And is it possible to have a different response to this? Is it possible to
Right.
have a different conversation? Is there a different story that I could make up instead of believing that you don't love me or value my time? Could I look at this and say, you were really late, yeah, and you were in a rush, and it just didn't work this time. And even though it's the 297th time that it's happened in our 20-year marriage, right? Which is actually good numbers.
Very good numbers.
Like, even though that's true, maybe it doesn't have anything to do with your love for me. And maybe that I need to communicate better what my boundaries are. Maybe I need to ease up because, right, like in this particular example, for instance, I want you to want to take out the trash. That's my favorite thing when people say it. I want them to want to do it. Listen, nobody wants to. It's not fun. What you want is, like, for unicorns to exist. That's cute.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? But
Yes.
here's the thing. You can send a text response. You can send a text reminder. You can participate and take radical responsibility that if you want your partner to take out the trash and they don't take out the trash for you and they say that they forget, you can remind them. You can take those steps. And maybe that doesn't work, right? And maybe you do have a deeper issue, but it's about taking ownership of it and saying, this matters to me. This is important. I see what my responses are. How can I contribute to making this better?
And it's not easy. Like, I'm thinking of instances where I have been as close to have a radically responsible response, like you were
Mm-hmm.
describing earlier, where I'm like, okay, it's not about this. And what happens if the other person is already frothy and they're like a mad dog, and that snowball is rolling down the hill? Sometimes that can push buttons more because they're still wanting to engage. They're still
Yeah.
in battle, and it takes a lot for you to maintain that
Yeah.
that radicalness, so to speak.
Yes.
I've been
But
in
I
that
also think
situation.
but I also think it can be disarming when
Yes.
we choose to stay aligned in our own values. If I see you going off on me and I say, you know what, Ted, I can tell that you're angry, and my intention was never to make you angry, right? Like, and I know that anger is a secondary emotion, so there's hurt and there's disappointment in there, and I care for you, and I wouldn't want you to feel that way, right? I obviously did something that caused this response to you. I'm going to take radical responsibility. I'm not saying that you're right. I'm not saying I'm a piece of shit and I ripped your heart out of your chest and stepped on it like you might be acting like I did. I'm not saying that. I'm saying I can see that you're hurt. Something obviously happened and I care for you, so I'm willing to come in here and just own it. I did something that caused this response in you, and I care enough to learn more about that so this doesn't happen again.
I want people to hear that, because the version that gets thrown out, which is one of my pet peeves, is I'm sorry
You feel that way?
you feel that way. Oh my God, passive aggressive. Talk about a button. So if you want to push my button, that's something for you to say. So I don't like it at all. And so,
Mm,
but what you're saying is you're actually taking responsibility.
own it. Because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, it's
I don't
choosing to
like that
give up the
Stacy's in
ego.
here, by the way. Stacy's in here listening and laughing, so it's real bad. Worst timing ever. But I
You're welcome,
feel like
Stacey.
it's just it's a place for people to be, but you have to also be prepared that just because you've decided, hey, I'm going to be radically responsible, that's not guaranteeing anybody in your circle that you work with, relate
No,
to, or in relationships with are
no.
going to feel the same way. So you can't expect them
Yeah.
to do exactly what you do.
But I feel like that's exactly what radical responsibility is it has nothing to do with anyone else. I'm going to do this because I have to go to bed with myself at night. I want to be able to sleep. I want to be able to feel good in my body. I want to be able to feel aligned in the world. Like, I can't come on here and be seen by the world if I feel like a fraud. Or I can, but I'm going to feel like a fraud and I'm going to question myself and I'm going to be full of doubts and I'm going to rewatch the video 900 times and think about everything that I said and pick apart every word that I said. And it's going to be because inside I know I am a fraud. Yes. Or I feel like a fraud. And I have to be the one that says, listen, I can't hide from the world. I can't. I need to go out into the world and I want to feel comfortable in my body. What do I have to do? It doesn't matter what you come at me with. It doesn't matter what the world throws at me. I still get to choose who I am. I get to show up in the world the way I believe is right for me. Period.
I love it. All right. So tell me about, you mentioned some steps, obviously self-awareness, but are there books you suggest we read? I know that there's some out there because, of course, when I posted about radical responsibility, I had 25 messages about, have you read the book by so-and-so? And I purposely did not look. But I know that there's literature out there. There's a movement out there about radical responsibility.
Well, I mean, if I'm honest, I don't know anything about that. I don't know anything about that. This is just a term that I use. I
love it.
But I think that, talking about relationships and talking about apologies and talking about language, there's two things that I would suggest. One is nonviolent communication, and I always mess up his name. Marshall Rosenthal. I'm going to look it up really quick.
Nonviolent communication. I like it.
Nonviolent communication. Nonviolent communication, and then let me give you his name because I think it's important and I keep messing it up and I don't want to. It is
Ted Bogert. I don't know, I'm throwing it out
there. Marshall Rosenberg. Yes, Marshall Rosenberg, nonviolent communication. I love this because it's going to give you language and a way to frame this experience that I think is really, really important. And then I would say also, Why Don't You Just Apologize by Harriet Lerner. And she touches on like that idea of saying, I'm sorry you feel that way, or like how to deal with situations where you're trying to reconcile in relationships, but we can't seem like you get the apology. Yeah. But you're like, that doesn't feel like an apology. I don't feel any better after that. What is that? And so she goes over all of the different ways that we botch apologies. She gives you a framework on how to actually apologize. But she also has this really beautiful perspective on forgiveness and boundaries that I absolutely love. So I would recommend Why Don't You Just Apologize? Love Harriet Lerner. She also does like the dance of anger. I feel like she's just brilliant. She's a wonderful researcher and a psychologist, therapist, and I can't recommend enough. So I would say make those your beginnings because again, part of taking radical responsibility was learning that I'm not right. Unfortunately, not all the time anyways.
I'm sorry. I didn't hear that last part. So we're out of time. That's how most people are going to react. They're like, oh yeah. That applies to everybody
Kendra
but me, Kendra. Yeah, that Kendra, boy, she's talking about you and you and you, but definitely not about
me.
And I think that was awesome. So good. I learned something today. And unfortunately, Stacey did too. So I have to figure that out. But that was really, really good. I had no idea what the concept was. I couldn't figure out what does it even mean, but that was excellent. That was excellent. All right, Kendra, how do they reach you?
Okay, you can learn more about me at stellarlifecoaching.com. You can find me on Instagram at stellarcoach. You can comment here, direct message me. You can call me at 407-203-8933. You can also text that number. Tell me how I can support you.
Always amazing. That's why we have to keep doing these weekly because they are super, super insightful. And somebody else must have learned something today. And I appreciate the love that you're shining in the world. All right, everybody. See you
Be
guys next
well.
week. Thank you so much, Kendra.
Bye, guys.
Bye,
Thank
guys.
you, Ted.
Bye bye.